Do you exist or are you a fictional character? Do you exist or are you a fictional character?
Yes, I was a fictional character in 2 comic books. One an Argentinian one and...
And if you are a fictional character, which plot do you prefer?
The one of Methuselah.
Great.
My name is Margit Södrup. I am a professor for practical philosophy, but I have written a book also on fiction, and I very much enjoyed your lecture. And I have also used your ideas, and I would be very interested actually in asking, you have now said that one reason why we cry when Anna Karenina is dying is that we identify ourselves, or we imagine to be in her shoes, practically, if I understood you correctly. The question is whether you make a difference, whether the narrative is written from the third-person perspective or a first-person narrator's perspective. Is it also possible to just the explanation that we cry because we put ourselves in the shoes of the narrator and not in the shoes of the person who is already dying? We never can cry about our own death, for example, whereas we can cry when we see somebody else dying. Whether you make this difference. Thank you very much.
No, I thought about that. My conclusion was that the problem is irrelevant. We can identify ourselves strongly with the first-person narration, but the case of Anna Karenina is a third-person narration, and we don't identify ourselves with Tolstoy, but with Anna. There can be cases in which the narrator becomes a sort of protagonist of the story. That's is another story. And then we can identify ourselves with the narrator. But in a good third-person narration, there is immediately some character that become the identifiable terms for identification. But the case of Anna is exactly that of Madame Bovary. They are not first person. And you identify yourself with Madame Bovary and a little less with Robinson Crusoe, even though Robinson Crusoe is in the first person. So I think that they are irrelevant for that problem. They are extremely relevant differences for semiotics of narrativity, takes Jeanette, all those researchers, but not so much from this. But maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, if you are interested in those things, that just been published in Italy. Curious book, Madame Bovary Like a Melody, by a girl, Carola Barbero, but she's strictly Meinongian, so it's an ontological approach, but pretty interesting. I think you can find it also online.
My name is Kristiina Jokinen. I'm here a visiting professor in computer science. And you mentioned about computers and how we could probably do rewriting with them. But there is also a possibility of virtual worlds where we can create virtual characters and actually immerse in this kind of a new reality. And I was wondering if you could say something about that kind of relation between these fictional characters, which we also create, but are in a way reality.
I think that the person making a role game and identifying himself or herself with the avatar, it's a sick person. I suggest the intervention of a psychoanalyst. It's like watching porno movies and imagining to be there. Yeah. But it's also true that you can invent a story and after a while to identify yourself with the characters you have invented. I think sometimes it happens slightly to me. I think it can happen in the sense that the story you have invented is objectivized, it's in face of you. It is no more like a child. The moment he comes out of the mother, he becomes an object different from the mother. And so it's possible to reread your own story and to feel emotions and identification with the character. Without exaggerating, I hope, if not, even in this case, the psychoanalyst is needed. Yeah.
My question is about language. Where does it come from? Is it there's some common origin, or it's accidental, or common origin of language? Where does the language come from? Was there?
So it's a question which has nothing to do with speech.
Yeah.
Is a glottogonic question. Well, I have written a book entitled The Search for the Perfect Language, which concerns in part all these theories, if there was an original language from which all the other derived, and so on and so forth. If you give me 6 months and 3 or 5 colleagues to make a course and a seminar on this subject, I can partly answer your question. But it's one of the most impressive questions that have inhabited the linguistics discussion. You know that in 1860-something, the International Society of Linguistics decided not to accept in the Congress papers concerning the origins of language, considering that they were all the work of mad people, and in any case it is impossible to speak of the origin of something which has not left archaeological witnesses, sounds. But there are many theories, even recently. There are the crazy theory by which the original language of Adam was the Swedish one. There are 3 theories about that in the Baroque period. There is now in Russia the Nostratic hypothesis of a certain mother tongue from which all the other derived. But, you know, at least you make only a sort of physical question why human beings were able to speak. For 2 reasons. Evidently, a particular cerebral structure, and the other to have elaborate certain configuration of the throat. Edgar Morin once said that if the human species had elaborated not a special configuration of the throat but of the sphincter, we would speak in a different way.
Johan Meister, Professor of Art History. And your very interesting report reminded me of one occasion in Calabria, at the coastline nearby Reggio. And there is a small museum where I met Murat, together with his troops, the whole staged in the visual form. Murat, the general of Napoleon. Yeah, Murat. And my question concerns how much of this world to share, the visual world, is fictional and conventional and built up as a sort of a agreement, as a shape and style since the illusions we share from the times of Greek and Greece and Latin culture. Did you catch my question?
No, you mean if the museum and those reconstructions
yes,
of the past...
that is a model of a reconstruction.
A fictional operation.
Yes, that is a...
I told it in a way. When we speak about the battles of Napoleon, etc., we make historical judgments. But when Napoleon becomes the main character of a sort of biographical reconstruction, we enter narrativity. If you go to Waterloo, there are many reconstructions of the battle, Song et Lumière, and so on and so forth. We are not sure until what an extent the reconstruction is not a narrative invention, in the same way in which many museums of the prehistory, of the Middle Ages, they are so well reconstructed that we are practically very close to fiction, like historical novels. And we are always living, but you know, take 1984 by Orwell. What did it mean to rewrite the Times every day? Or to eliminate, like under Stalin, the image of Trotsky in the photographs, if not to rewrite history as it were a fiction. So we are always playing this double jeu. And one of the forms of criticism is to see when we are really facing an historical reconstruction of or a narrative, fictional reconstruction of history. There are very blatant cases, the Hollywood movies about the Roman Empire. We know that is reconstruction. Okay, they invented even the way in which Romans cheer each other in order to not to make them to to use the Roman gesture, the fascist gesture. So they have reconstructed the past, many medieval movies in which we see marvelous castles, like in Disneyland. In the Middle Ages, there were not castles with towers. They were horrible, small things. So we are continuously rewriting reality in order to, even our Prime Minister Berlusconi for the election produced a book which is Life, which is a marvelous piece of narrativity. Now we discover, since his wife asked for divorce, that it was all false.
My name is Morten Tønnesen. I'm a PhD student at the Department of Semiotics. And you talked about the difference between physical existence and fictional existence. And I would like you to say something about what role fiction can be said to play within natural science or applied science. Because...
So what is... No, I missed the real question.
Well, let me finish. First, it's obvious, of course, that imagination and creativity are fundamental traits of humans in many walks of life. And often in applied science, we start out with imagining something that does not exist. It's totally mind-dependent. And then we carry it into life. So it actually turns into something with a physical existence. Isn't that the work of fiction?
No. Take, for instance, the cold fusion, typical example of a scientific hoax. It was untrue. I don't say it's a fiction. It's a mistake, which is different. Ptolemy believed, in good faith, that the Earth was still immobile and the sun turned. It was not making fiction. It was committing a mistake, simply, and believe it. I say that there is fiction when the author pretends to say the truth and asks you to pretend that you are believing it. In this case, you are in a fictional world. If not, it's a lie. If I tell you that there is an elephant outside and you naively go out to see whether is there or not, that's not a case of fiction. I am only a damned liar. That's all. And you are too much naive. Except you are not Thomas Aquinas, because it seems that his comrades told him, because he was always studying, Thomas, there is an ass flying on the skies, and he went out to look, and there was no. They laughed, ha ha ha, and he said, I believe it was more very similar that there was an ass flying than a monk lied.
I'm Michael Lottman, and thank you very much for your beautiful presentation. And have I correctly understand that it's difference between Anna Karenina and Adolf Hitler? That Adolf Hitler. Anna Karenina is definitely died. That about Hitler we are not so sure. And maybe Elvis is absolutely alive. Yes, because they have different ontological status. But how you explain that Sherlock Holmes? Oh, by the way, Sherlock Holmes died or not in the waterfall? So maybe Sherlock Holmes is not as Anna Karenina.
Two answers. The second one is that since Sherlock Holmes became a fluctuating entity, he was impersonated many other times after his fight with Dr. Moriarty. And so we are not sure that he really died in the same way. We are not sure that Rocambole really died, because after his death, the reader protested so much that the author had to start again, say, but in fact he didn't really die. As for Hitler, my point was, we know that Hitler really existed and Anna Karenina. But in spite of this, our judgments about Hitler can always change, while the judgment about Anna Karenina cannot change. That was the point that interested me. I am ready to swear that Anna Karenina committed suicide. I don't bet the head of my sons on the fact that Hitler really died in the bunker. That's a curious difference between reality and fiction. Fiction, in a way, in a larger version of this paper, I say that fictional judgments are a good litmus test in order to distinguish between the credibility of judgment about, that Hitler died in a bunker is true only if it is true like Clark Kent is Superman. I say that the Pope and the Dalai Lama or the great Mufti of Jerusalem can discuss all the life on the fact if Jesus was the Son of God or not. But if they are honest and well-informed persons, they must agree together that Superman is Clark Kent. And there is no way to escape this fictional truth. If the other truths are so strong as Superman is Clark Kent, then we can trust them.
Sorry. Maybe the difference is because there are only one source about Anna Karenina, and there are different sources about Hitler. And
certainly. That's the A narration established once forever a certain course of events about which we can make judgments. But what is curious is that we are ready to say Sherlock Holmes lived in London and not in Paris, as it were true. If a student at the university says that Hitler didn't die, well, you have to discuss. But if he says that Anna Karenina lived in Baker Street, you kick him or her out, because even at the university, you cannot say that Anna Karenina lived in Baker Street. That's...
My name is Lina Kusni, I'm a journalist, and what I wanted to ask is, you were speaking of religious characters which are fictional for at least 90% of those who don't believe in them, both Christ and Buddha and Manitou. But we know that still those fictitious or unfictitious characters do influence society and politics. And in a way, books influence society and politics as well, as we can see at least from Salman Rushdie's, for example. So what do you think? We don't doubt the reason why the religion can influence politics and society. What do you think is the reason why books, literature, fictitious characters can do this as well?
We can decide to gather fictional characters, legendary heroes, and 90% of religious entities under the general heading of myth. The first answer is that human beings need myths. Human beings are religious animals, and even though who say not to be religious, they commit suicide for Werther. And certain gods have influenced enormously the history of civilization, but even Oedipus, it has also influenced science. Take Freud. So there are myths. We need myths, because we cannot accept, first of all, the idea that we have to die, and so we need immortal figments. And second, because we need moral examples. To say, my life is like, and that is the function of fictional characters, as it the function of the saints. A lot of people say, my life is the one of Santa Rita, or like, we need it. Animals don't.
So once again, thank you very much and for the answers of these questions. And there is good news. Umberto Eco is not taking first bus from Tartu to Tallinn airport, but he is staying with us today and tomorrow, and there is an opportunity to listen his lecture tomorrow, as well as to prepare some questions he would probably answer as well. So once again, thank you very much.